Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today, my friends, we are diving back into Call of Duty Warzone because we got some new best loadouts to check out. As we know, just a few days back, we ended up getting sort of a surprise weapon tuning update in a sense, sort of out of the blue on Friday. Raven ended up tweeting out that they nerfed the AMAX, they nerfed the Farah, they nerfed a ton of different mobility attachments on Cold War weapons. They ended up buffing the PPSH. Like, we got a lot of different weapon tuning on Friday that we weren't really expecting to happen then, but lo and behold, it's here. And honestly, it opens up the meta even more. It makes some of the best loadouts even more viable. And honestly, right now, I would say the meta is in the best spot it's ever been in. So today we are going over the top 5 best loadouts in my opinion right now. As always, if you enjoyed the video or if you just find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. Let's go for, let's say 4,500 likes today. Let's see if we can cross that. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't already subscribed, I'm always covering everything going on in COD, news, intel, setups, you name it, it's all right here. So feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date. So the first loadout I want to check out today is sort of the old reliable, I would call this one. It's comprised of the Grau 5.56, by far my favorite weapon in Warzone history, and also the Modern Warfare MP5, two classic MW weapons that were each really good at one point. The Grau, ever since it was nerfed and dethroned from being the best gun in the game, has always been decently reliable, but there have been better assault rifle options. Then when it comes to the Modern Warfare MP5, as we know, this has been like a go-to SMG pretty much all year long. There has been some better options here and there, but it's always been one that you could always go to. It was always viable. It was always pretty competitive. You can never really go wrong with it. So now in this meta where we don't have a super dominant SMG or a super dominant rifle, both the Grau and the Modern Warfare MP5 are pretty competitive. You can use them. You can do well with them. And personally, what I love about this loadout the most is it is incredibly easy to use. The Grau, I'd say, is probably the easiest rifle to use in the game. It's either that or the M13, but the Grau, in my opinion, is just the better rifle. It's got next to no recoil. It's got what I think are the cleanest iron sights in the entire game with the Archangel barrel. And it's got great velocity, great range, and its damage is pretty decent, especially in the current meta with the current TTK. So Grau, definitely a great choice. Modern Warfare MP5, on the other hand, might be the most reliable SMG we currently have because it's got really good mobility, pretty minimal recoil, decent TTK for, you know, an SMG compared to the others, and decent range as well. So both these weapons are very consistent all across the board. That to me makes for a fantastic loadout. And when it comes to the attachments here on the Grau, we got the same old, the glorious setup that I absolutely love. Monolithic suppressor, Archangel barrel for those spicy iron sights, the tac laser for some increased stability and mobility, the commando foregrip to pretty much eliminate any recoil that there is, then finally the 60 round mags to make those squad wipes and cleanups a bit easier. Then for the Modern Warfare MP5, again, same old here. We've got the monolithic integral suppressor, by far the best barrel in this case. You don't need to use the regular monolithic. I've got the 5 milliwatt laser because the hip fire is just insane on this thing. We've got the Merc foregrip, the 45 round mags, and the icon itself, the Stippy Grippy. Alongside that, and this goes for all my setups, same perks and equipment on everything, we've got double time, overkill, and amped. You could always swap out double time for EOD though, just sort of preference there. I like to go just as rush heavy as I possibly can, so double time is sort of favorable in that sense. Then in the second loadout, I always do swap out overkill for restock. That way I can have both my weapons and I can keep replenishing my thermites and my stuns. Now, the next loadout is one that I wasn't sure if it was gonna be a top loadout, but lo and behold, it is. This one is comprised of the AMAX, which of course was just actually nerfed, and then also the Cold War MP5. So we got both the MP5s in the current meta, if you want to call it that. Honestly, it doesn't even feel like a meta because not one gun is just so dominant, right? But the AMAX, of course, got the damage nerf with the last update. Was it enough to just push the AMAX into the dirt? Absolutely not. This thing still feels very similar to what it was before. It still feels very consistent in medium range fights, pretty good in those longer range fights. You just have to take into account that you're going to have to land another 1, 2, 3, or 4 shots, depending on how much health the enemy has, where you're hitting them, whether it be the head, the chest, the extremities, then also the range of the fight as well. So there's a few different factors that matter a little bit more now, but overall the AMAX is still a very reliable weapon. Definitely not a super significant nerf. It's still very competitive and is one of the best rifles and honestly one of the best weapons in the entire game still. Then the Cold War MP5 I've really been enjoying recently. To me, it does take a bit more skill to use than the Modern Warfare MP5 strictly because it does have a bit more recoil, so the control isn't as, you know, I guess, comfortable. You do have to go that extra step and learn that recoil pattern because this one is a bit more difficult. It's a bit more noticeable. But the Modern Warfare MP5 it doesn't have the damage that the Cold War MP5 does. The TTK is slightly better here, and so if you're landing your shots, you're gonna fry with this thing. The mobility, while it's not as good as it was before because of some of the mobility nerfs, it's still pretty good. It's still usable for an SMG and competitive for an SMG in terms of mobility specifically, so another great secondary choice. And by the way, as we go through all these loadouts today, any of the secondaries here, whether it be either the MP5s or any of the other ones we're looking at, you can swap them out with pretty much any of the primaries. They're gonna work just fine. But as far as this setup goes, for the AMAX, same setup as we were using before the nerf. We've got monolithic suppressor, as always, the Zodiac barrel for that better range and control, the Commando foregrip yet again, the 45 round mags, and the VOK 3x optic. And personally, I do use that T-pose reticle. And then on the Cold War MP5, I got the agency suppressor first and foremost. Now, personally, I don't run a barrel. If you were to run a barrel, I'd highly recommend Task Force. That's pretty much the best one. But specifically, I think I used the Candy Core variant. Yeah, Candy Core is what it's called. This one has like the super clean iron sights, and if you use a barrel, you don't get those. And a barrel honestly isn't super necessary all the time, so I forego the barrel there, and instead I run the field agent to control that recoil. The 40 or the 50 round drum doesn't really matter there. You could use either. The Serpent Rat for some better mobility, and then also the Raider stock for some better mobility. While it's not going to be as fast as before, like I said, it's still going to be pretty agile for a sub and still very competitive in terms of that. Now, next up we have what I would call my sort of experimental class. I'm not sure if this is the exact weapon combination I want to be running, but I did want to feature both these weapons in this video because they're both pretty dominant. The first is going to be the Carve 2 or the G11, which we just got as a new DLC weapon. Then also the Cold War AK-47. So we are using double ARs, which really is not so much of a meta anymore because of the nerfs with the mobility specifically in the last update. But the AK-47 from Cold War is still pretty good. It's not going to be as fast as it was before, but it is going to be usable in certain situations. And like I said, I wanted to feature both these guns in this video, so I threw them on the same class. Is this the most optimal setup for most players? Probably not, because you are doubling up on ammo, but if you want to try it, it's definitely a solid setup. The Carve 2 is a beast, especially in those medium range fights. Its TTK is very, very fast. It hits like a truck, and it's got a great fire rate for a burst weapon, so definitely very reliable. Of course, we just talked about this in a separate video, so I won't go on too much about that one. Then the Cold War AK-47, like I said, while it is slower, is still pretty fun to use as like an SMG AR hybrid. If you told me that we'd be using an AK-47 for close range fights, I'd say that's kind of weird because typically AKs aren't like that, at least in previous CODs. But in the case of Warzone, it is usable, and specifically for me, I don't like to use a sight on the AK-47. I like to run the iron sights, and because of that, you don't get a ton of visibility in those medium and longer range fights, especially if the enemies are on some cover or they're strafing really fast or something. It's hard to trace players with the default iron sights when you're trying to control the recoil and everything. So close range, it's going to be the most optimal. And to me, despite some of the mobility nerfs, it's still pretty solid in those closer range fights. When it comes to the Carve 2, same exact attachments that I was running the other day. Agency silencer, strike team barrel, I feel like is the best for the most versatility here. Cavalry is going to give you the best velocity, I believe, and Task Force is honestly pretty usable up close. But personally, I like Strike Team to give me that sort of close range competitiveness and some medium range competitiveness as well. I've also got Field Agent on there to control that recoil, 45 round speed mag, and the 3x optic yet again. Then for the AK-47, same setup that I was using prior to the nerf, although, like I said, it's just going to be a bit slower now. We've got the Grau suppressor, the Spetsnaz barrel, which does actually help with that strafe speed a little bit. We've got the 45 round speed mag, which you might want to actually swap out for the 45 round now to get a better ADS speed. We've got the Serpent Wrap on there, then also the skeletal stock as well. Then after that, we've got what is my new sniper loadout for the current meta. Meta, again, if you really want to call it that. This one features, again, the CAR because I still think it is the best sniper option we've got. And then also the LC10, which to me, I feel like is the best sniper complement in terms of a decent close and medium range weapon. You could try and use an AR. It's going to be a bit slower now, obviously, because of those mobility nerfs. And honestly, most of the Modern Warfare rifles aren't great as a sniper complement. They're going to be a lot slower. So I do like to run the sub. That way I've got the mobility. I've got the rotation speed if I need it. And it's going to provide that close range dominance as well. The LC10, especially after the Bullfrog damage nerf, is going to feel a bit better in those closer range fights. It might not feel as fast as the Bullfrog because it got some mobility buffs. But when it comes to damage, the LC10 is definitely looking pretty nice in that category. In the car, nothing new here. It's a great sniper, one-shot headshot, fantastic mobility, fantastic ADS speed. Nothing wrong with that one. As far as the car attachments go, same as always. Monolithic suppressor, the 27.6-inch barrel for better control and range. You don't really need the control, though. Tac laser for speed and stability. The sniper scope, personally, I use the cross-thread reticle. Then also the comb stock for better stability. Then when it comes to the LC10, I've got the agency suppressor on there again for that better range. Task Force barrel for that better range and strafe speed. It's going to be a bit faster and a bit more viable in those medium range fights as well if you need. We've got the field agent grip to control that recoil, the 42 round speed mag, and then finally the Raider stock, which again is not going to be as good as it was before, but it's still probably the best option here. If you're not using that, I'd probably go for like the jungle grip maybe, or the serpent wrap again, one of those two to get that better ADS time. And then finally, we've got another setup that really shines post AMAX nerf for the rifle category is a bit more open. This one is the Ram 7 and the Bullfrog. And yes, the Bullfrog, like I said, did get that damage nerf, but that mobility nerf, I feel like still makes it a very competitive SMG. It's going to be great for those closer range fights. You've got the mobility. You know, the MAC-10, in my opinion, still a really good SMG, and it has that mobility going for it. It just doesn't have the TTK now, per se. But the Bullfrog is now sort of in that same boat. While it might not be the strongest SMG out there, it's got the mobility, which allows you to sort of finesse players up close. If your movement is good, if you can slide cancel, if you can string movement combinations like that together, the Bullfrog is going to be really, really good for that. Then the Ram is going to be one of those better rifles now because you don't have those insanely broken rifles anymore. That entire category is pretty open and pretty diverse. And the Ram, with its faster fire rate and decent TTK alongside its pretty good damage, and then honestly the recoil I don't feel like is too bad. All that combined makes this a very consistent weapon across close, medium, and long range fights if you're able to control it. So definitely one of the better rifle options, at least in my opinion. So for the Ram, once again, we've got the monolithic suppressor, no surprise there, the Ranger barrel for better range and control, the Commando foregrip, the 50 round mags, and the VOK 3 times yet again. Then on the Bullfrog, I've got the Grau suppressor, the Task Force barrel, the Ember sighting point, which is actually going to extend that range some, which I feel like is especially nice now because of that damage drop off and that damage nerf. It's going to help out with that a little bit more. I've also got the Serpent Wrap on there for better mobility and the skeletal stock. Again, it's going to help with the speed a little bit, especially now since it's not going to be as fast as it was before. And honestly, you get the big mag by default, so you don't really need to use any of the ammo upgrades here. And the recoil here is like next to nothing. You don't really need to use an underbarrel either. So very straightforward setup here, very reliable for those close and medium range fights. Although medium range, it's not going to be super, super strong, but usable to a certain extent. So yeah, in my opinion, those are the new best loadouts to be running here after the latest weapon tuning update. But that said, by no means are these the only loadouts you could run in this meta. There is a ton of weapons now that are very competitive and very viable. Like I said in the intro, I think this is the most open the meta's ever been. So just because these are the weapons I featured in this video doesn't mean they're the only good weapons right now. You can definitely experiment with quite a few other things, and you're probably going to end up finding success with them. But that is going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't already subscribed, I am always covering everything going on in COD, whether it be news, intel, updates, loadouts, you name it, it's all right here. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know whenever I upload a new video. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code WhosImmortal for a discount on all Scuff, G Fuel, Control Freak, and Gamer Advantage products. And the links for all those can be found down in the description below. But once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.